Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of Starlink 8-8 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base, Space Launch Complex 4 East from the West Coast. We hope you all are doing fine. Now we are awaiting for a Falcon 9 liftoff at 8:58 a.m. Eastern Time from California for a southeasterly launch for SpaceX Starlink mission. The Starlink mission 8-8 will launch 20 Starlink satellites, including 13 with direct-to-cell capabilities. This launch marks SpaceX's amazing 355th overall launch. Hello, my name is Dipta Maitra, performing the commentary for today's mission launch. We are super excited to bring you the coverage of SpaceX 62nd overall launch and 60th launch of Falcon 9 of this year. This will be the 43rd dedicated Starlink mission of this year for SpaceX. Prior to today's launch, SpaceX has launched 945 Starlink satellites so far, over 42 flights this year, and overall 6,593 Starlink satellites to date. Before getting into the mission details, just a reminder, today, that is on 8th June, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams will be taking us on a tour of Boeing Starliner spacecraft at the International Space Station. The stream will be starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 1 p.m. UTC. Just a heads up, it's me running the show for all our launches. So if we hit any technical snags, please hang tight, but nothing to worry. I will do my best to walk you through the Falcon 9 rocket launch happening in 45 minutes and counting. Now let's get back to today's mission. So far, SpaceX reports that the weather is looking good, although it is a little foggy and cloudy here at Vandenberg, but that won't poses any risk or violation for today's launch. We hope that they are able to launch on time and not have to push too far. But if for some reason we don't launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow, that is Sunday, June 9th, with launch window opening at 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time. SpaceX is currently targeting a liftoff of Falcon 9 from Vandenberg Space Force Base, that is 8:58 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 5:58 a.m. Pacific Time. And 12:58 p.m. UTC. Firstly, we would like to thank all of you joining us for today's launch and would request, if you haven't already, please like this video to help YouTube's algorithm bring in more space fans and rocket enthusiasts. Also, it will be so kind of you subscribing to our channel. Now let's take a look at today's payload details for Starlink Group 8-8 mission. This launch marks the 43rd dedicated Starlink launch for this year. The first launch of 21 Starlink version 2 mini satellites, also referred as Starlink Group 6-1 mission, took place from Space Launch Complex 40, Cape Canaveral, Florida on February 27 back on 2023. Now a quick fun fact. At the inception, the two identical Starlink satellites called Microsat 2A and Microsat 2B were launched on 22nd February 2018. Upon orbital deployment, they were renamed to Tintin A and Tintin B. So Tintin A and Tintin B are the first Starlink satellite to be launched ever. Starlink satellites are built at SpaceX Satellite Development Facility in Redmond, Washington. And today's launch consists of 20 version 2 mini satellites, including 13 satellites with direct-to-cell capabilities. The version 2 variant of Starlink is too large to fit inside a Falcon 9 fairing and is meant to be launched by Starship. So for that, SpaceX modified the original version 2 blueprint into a smaller, more compact one named version 2 mini. SpaceX also indicated that they would build satellites of the second generation constellation in two different but technically identical form factors. One with the physical structure tailored to launch on Falcon 9, that is version 2 mini, and another tailored for the launch on Starships, that is version 2. Each Starlink satellite is equipped with powerful 5 advanced Ku phased array antennas and 3 dual band parabolic antennas which utilizes Ka and E bands to provide increased capacity. These antennas utilizes Ku, Ka and E band frequencies together, allowing Starlink to provide high bandwidth connectivity, that is 4 times more capacity per satellite than earlier versions. Each satellite features a dual solar array with a size of 52.5 square meters, that is 565 square feet, which unfurls to a wingspan of 100 feet. Also, it has a high capacity battery to provide power to the payloads. The two solar arrays are also aeroneutral, which enables faster on-orbit maneuvers whenever required. Each Starlink satellite contains 3 space laser transponders, that is optical inter-satellite links or ISLs, for intercommunications, operating at up to 2 Gbps, which together across the constellation form a global internet mesh that can connect customers anywhere in the world, also enabling the spacecraft to transmit data without local ground stations, providing truly global coverage. Each Starlink version 2 mini satellites weighs 800 kilograms, that is 1763 pounds. Starlink satellites are equipped with efficient ion Hall effect thrusters powered by argon, which enable Starlink satellites to orbit raise, maneuver in space, and deorbit at the end of their useful life. Starlink is the first Krypton-propelled spacecraft ever flown, but later switched to argon Hall effect thrusters for cost effectiveness. Upon switching to argon, Starlink still remained the first argon-propelled spacecraft ever flown in space. Now, relative to Krypton, the argon required to fuel Starlink version 2 mini satellites would be practically free. To put it into perspective, fueling its next constellation of almost 30,000 version 2 satellites could cost SpaceX less than fueling 4,000 version 1 satellites, which were based on Krypton. Also, SpaceX claims that its second generation thrusters using argon has 2.4 times the thrust and 1.5 times the specific impulse of the previously krypton fuel thruster. Today's payload will be placed in an orbit with an altitude of 535 kilometers and with an inclination of 53 degrees. But this configuration does not apply to every Starlink satellite. Starlink satellites are placed in different configurations based on different groups. Starlink uses custom-built navigation sensors named Star Tracker that survey the stars to determine each satellite's location, altitude, and orientation for their best possible broadband throughput. Each Starlink satellite contains 4 reaction wheels providing agile attitude control for the vehicle. The hot spare configuration ensures high reliability of operation and its aluminum flywheel is fully demisable at the end of life. Also worth mentioning, the Starlink satellites are equipped with an onboard autonomous collision avoidance system for avoiding collisions with other spacecrafts and space junk autonomously, which utilizes the US Department of Defense debris tracking database. While speaking of SpaceX direct-to-cell Starlink satellites, direct-to-cell is a technology developed by Starlink team. In easy words, it's like having a cell phone tower in space. This technology allows your cell phone to connect directly to satellites. Imagine you are in a remote area where there is no cell tower nearby. Normally you won't get any signal on your phone. But with direct-to-cell, your phone can get a signal directly from a Starlink satellite overhead. You don't need to make any changes to your existing LTE phone or download any special apps. It is designed to work with common LTE standards. Whether you are on land, lakes, or coastal areas, as long as you see the sky, you can get a signal. It provides connectivity in remote regions, giving you the peace of mind when you need it the most. Now recently Starlink achieved its first video call on X through Starlink direct-to-cell satellites from unmodified mobile phones. Previously we saw textual communications using direct-to-cell satellites. Starlink is expecting to go live with T-Mobile later this year. Now let's go through a quick comparison of latency between Starlink and geostationary satellites. Earlier we had an update that Starlink achieved a new internal median latency record of 28 milliseconds. Also now they have a goal of median latency for Starlink internet in the US, that is United States, to get below 20 milliseconds. The internet that comes from satellite, most of the time it is a single satellite that's orbiting about 35,786 kilometers from Earth. Because it is so far away, the time it takes for data to go back and forth, what we call latency, is pretty high. This makes it tough to do things like streaming movies, playing online games, and making video calls. Now let's talk about Starlink. It's like a big team of thousands of satellites that are much closer to us, just about 550 kilometers from the Earth. They are all over the place, covering the whole globe, and because they are closer, the latency is way lower. To put it into perspective, think of 25 milliseconds of latency compared to 600 and plus milliseconds of latency. You can see on your screen what is the number of round trips in each case in case of Starlink compared to a geostationary satellite. That's a huge difference. So, in a nutshell, Starlink lower orbit makes it a game changer for satellite internet, which means smoother video calls, lag free online gaming, and other high data rate activities. Now, moving on, let's learn a little bit about Starlink's collision avoidance system. It is quite fascinating to know how, despite having so many satellites around the Earth, they manage to stay safe and avoid collisions. So, let's learn about it a little. SpaceX designs the Starlink satellites orbit raising and orbit lowering reference trajectories with a time optimal path planning algorithm. The algorithm includes additional constraints to ensure that the Starlink satellites always remain at a large and safe distance from space stations and other spacecrafts, and from also other Starlink satellites under nominal circumstances. As an additional safety measure, Starlink's screening system constantly monitors the satellite's planned reference trajectories against other spacecrafts, space stations, and other Starlink satellites. The system alerts the Starlink operators immediately when a potential conjunction is detected, and the reference trajectories are replanned to change the geometry of the encounter and avoid the conjunction whenever it's possible. Each Starlink launch typically includes enough satellites to fill several orbital planes. For this reason, a train of satellites is usually divided into smaller trains that depart from parking orbit on different dates to target specific orbital planes, which is also a part of pre-planned conjunction avoidance. The technique for avoiding conjunction avoidance at the planning stages are an additional precaution in addition to Starlink collision avoidance system. In this context, conjunction avoidance during planning refers to designing trajectories that maintain satellites far away from space station under nominal circumstances. Deconflicting trajectories at the planning stage requires predicting potential conjunction several weeks into the future, which naturally limits the accuracy of the results. As part of SpaceX's multi-tiered approach to space safety, Starlink's automatic collision avoidance system allows Starlink satellites to plan maneuvers to minimize the collision probability during close approaches that could not be avoided when planning. Now we have a request again for you folks. If you haven't already, please consider giving this video a like. It really helps YouTube's algorithm to bring in more space fans and rocket enthusiasts. And if you are feeling we are adding any value to your viewing experience, please consider subscribing. We would be super grateful for your support. Now let's take a look at the flight record for the booster supporting today's Starlink mission. The booster with tail number 1061 supporting today's mission is quite a mature booster with 20 previous flights in its record, including missions like SpaceX Crew 1, SpaceX Crew 2, SXM-8, commercial resupply mission that is CRS-23, IXPE launch, Transporter 4 mission, Transporter 5 mission as well, Globestar FM-15, ISI EROS C3, Korea 4 to 5 mission, and lastly the Maxar Worldview Legion 1 and 2, which launched back here only at Vandenberg Space Force Base, and 9 Starlink missions. Now the booster is awaiting its 20th flight, just minutes away. Previously, with Starlink Group 6-59 launch on May 17th from Cape Canaveral, SpaceX achieved a record. For the first time, a Falcon booster with tail number 1062 launched for record-breaking 21st time. Now today's supporting booster 1061 will also have 21 flights in its milestone after successful completion of this mission. Currently, other boosters with tail number 1060, 1067 have 20 launches so far as their milestones, awaiting to reach their record-breaking milestone soon. Now let's take a look at the bar graphs we are having here for Falcon 9 launches each year. Before today's launch, SpaceX completed 59 launches of Falcon 9 so far this year as part of its milestone, with recent Starlink Group 10-1 mission launch from Space Launch Complex 40, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, just yesterday, which is within less than 12 hours, that is on June 7th. Also with that mission, SpaceX did accomplish a record-breaking 300 overall SpaceX landing to date. The Starlink mission Group 10-1 also marks the first launch of a Starlink Group 10, first Starlink mission from the Cape to launch on a northeast trajectory in 1.5 years. And as I said before, it also marks 300 overall SpaceX landing to date. SpaceX hit a big milestone this year's 50th launch with previous Starlink 8-7 mission, which was just 2 more than half of last year's Falcon 9 launches, which totaled 48. Now, with the last Starlink launch, they have 11 more launches than half of the total launches made last year. This year's count already surpasses the total number of Falcon 9 launches from all the years leading up to 2021, and they are now getting close to launches made in 2022 with only 2 launches to go. Now with today's launch of Starlink Group 8-8 mission, the bar graph depicts 60 Falcon 9 launches so far this year. They have already done more than half as many launches as they did in the last year, and it's been only 5 months and 8 days only. If they keep up with this pace, they are on their mighty way to hit 140 to 148 launches by the end of this year. SpaceX is really pushing hard to achieve their big goals. Also, we just witnessed the 4th integrated flight test of Starship on June 6th. Now awaiting the 5th one tentatively towards the end of June or early July. Now please allow us a couple of seconds to check whether the launch is on time or not and to stay updated. But please be tuned in here only. We will be just right back in few seconds. So far it seems like the liftoff time is on time, that is 5:58 a.m. Pacific time, which will be 8:58 a.m. Eastern time, 12:58 p.m. UTC. Now let's go ahead as we progress through the countdown and review the milestones that lie ahead of us on this Vandenberg flight. At T-minus 38 minutes, countdown begins at this point when SpaceX launch director gives the go for the start of propellant load. If everything looks fine, prop load begins at T-minus 30 minutes mark with the loading of rocket grade kerosene or RP-1 on board the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, LOX load, that is super chilled liquid oxygen, is also loaded on board the first stage. And then at T-minus 16 minutes, which will be the next event that we are looking for here, that's when the second stage liquid oxygen load begins. At T-minus 7 minutes, that's when the chill down of 9 Merlin engine gets underway, which involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through plumbing and turbopumps, which help protect the engine from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. At about 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. In a T-minus 4 minutes and a half, the strong back retract sequence begins. The process with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairing opening up, followed by transport ejector or the strong back reclining about 1.5 degrees from Falcon 9. A point to be noted that we will be reclining the strong back about a 13 degree away from the Falcon 9, as because it is a Vandenberg Space Force base launch. Generally, at Space Launch Complex 40, that is at Cape, and LC-39A, that is at Kennedy Space Center, we do recline the strong back about 1.5 degrees. So now it will be remaining in that position until liftoff. It's when it rapidly pulls back to clear the way for Falcon 9 rocket's vertical ascent. The strong back positioned alongside the vehicle, also referred as the transport ejector, fulfills multiple functions. It supplies propellants, provides air conditioning, pressurization gases, and electrical power. Additionally, it transports the Falcon 9 to the launch pad and positions it for the launch. Now coming at the T-minus 3 minutes mark, the first stage liquid oxygen loading should be complete, followed by second stage liquid oxygen loading wrapping up at T-minus 2 minute mark. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. Now coming at T-minus 1 minute mark, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. In the final 60 seconds countdown, the control of the flight system, that is launch sequence, is handed over from the ground sequencer to Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. If everything looks good, at T-minus 45 seconds mark, the launch director, that is SpaceX launch director, will be giving the final go for Falcon 9 liftoff. Now at T-minus 3 seconds, the engine ignition sequence start command being issued by onboard engine controller. Finally at T0, we have liftoff. If all 9 Merlin 1D engines ignite and are healthy, flight computers will give the command for hold down clamps to release on Falcon 9. Currently targeting a liftoff time of the Falcon 9 from Vandenberg Space Force Base at 8:58 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 5:58 a.m. Pacific Time, 12:58 p.m. UTC on Saturday, that is June 8th. Now let's go ahead and briefly step through the trajectory for today's Starlink mission. With the spacecraft on board, the batch of 20 Starlink satellites with 13 direct-to-cell capabilities Starlink satellites as well. Falcon 9 will lift off from Space Launch Complex 4 East from Vandenberg Space Force Base in a southeast trajectory along the coast of Southern California, heading into a low Earth orbit, indicated by that green line on your screen. The red line you see that indicates where Falcon 9 first stage will land after stage separation, just a little later, leaving California's coast. This is going to be a off-the-land landing in droneship landing using autonomous spaceport droneship named, of course, I Still Love You, here on the west coast, which means that the first stage booster with tail number 1061 flying for the 21st time will be returning, heading out to the droneship. As of now, the estimated booster recovery is approximately 627 kilometers, with estimated fairing recovery approximately 703 kilometers downrange. And the stage 2 debris re-entry will be in the East Pacific. Currently, there are 3 in SpaceX droneship fleet. We anticipate the addition of a 4th droneship, possibly occurring late this year or in early next year. Out of 3, just read the instruction and shortfall of gravitas are based in Florida. And another, of course, I Still Love You, here at California. Speaking of fairing recovery, the 2 halves of the payload fairing will be recovered slightly farther downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship, after they will smoothly splash down with the guidance of parachutes. SpaceX will utilize a recovery vessel to retrieve them from Atlantic waters. SpaceX manufactures the fairing in-house, with the total cost of 2 halves is nearly $6 million. So it is of no wonder that SpaceX aims to recover the fairing for repetitive use, mirroring their approach with rocket boosters, upholding the motto of reusability and sustainability. You can see on your screen how a fairing recovery looks like. On your screen you are seeing the recovery vessel Doug performing the fairing recovery in the Atlantic waters. But here at Pacific Ocean we do have other recovery vessels, and today's supporting recovery vessel is Go Beyond. The previous Starlink Group 10-1 mission, the supporting recovery vessel was Bob. SpaceX has named its 2 new recovery ships Bob and Doug after Bob Bacon and Doug Hurley, the 2 NASA astronauts and the first crew SpaceX launched for NASA under Commercial Crew Program on Demo 2 mission to International Space Station back in 2020. Now let's jump into the stats for today's mission. The launch marks 355th SpaceX overall launch and the 43rd dedicated launch of Starlink satellites for this year. This will be the 344th Falcon 9 launch to date. 21st flight of this particular Falcon 9 booster supporting today's mission with tail number 1061. 60th Falcon 9 launch of 2024 so far, and is SpaceX 62nd overall launch of this year, including the third and fourth integrated flight test of Starship. We are expecting the next that is fifth integrated flight test of Starship probably on end of June or early July. This is SpaceX 289th Falcon booster reflight to date. That is the launch of booster that has flown at least once before. 79th orbital launch for SpaceX, launching from pad 4E. This is the 146th overall orbital launch from this pad, Space Launch Complex 4 East. And with this mission success, SpaceX will have a remarkable 6,613 Starlink launch to date. Now moving on to some reusability statistics. This launch marks 275th Falcon 9 booster reflight to date. Please don't be confused. Previously I mentioned that it will be the SpaceX 289th Falcon booster reflight to date. And now I'm saying that it will be the 275th Falcon 9 booster reflight to date. So please mark the difference in between them. And this will be the 92nd landing on Of Course I Still Love You drone ship. 21st landing of the first stage booster with tail number 1061. With this mission's first stage landing, which paves the way to 249th overall drone landing, marking 301st Falcon 9 landing to date and 318th SpaceX overall landing to date. Speaking of drone ship landings, it is worth mentioning among the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas has a flawless record with 0 unsuccessful landing attempts and 74 successful landings. In comparison, Just Read the Instruction has encountered 3 unsuccessful landings and 8 successful landings, while Of Course I Still Love You has experienced 7 unsuccessful landings and 91 successful landings. So this gives a shortfall of Gravitas the lead in clean and successful drone ship landing attempts. Please note that these drone ship landing stats mentioned here are excluding today's mission. Now let's have a quick look into some key stats for SpaceX launches in this year, including today's mission. So SpaceX has a total of 62 launches, and out of those 17 were non-Starlink mission, including 2 Starship launches. SpaceX reused booster for 58 times in those launches, showing their commitment to sustainability and reusability. Now looking into the geographical distribution, they have 41 launches from East Coast, with 12 from Launch Complex 39A, that is Kennedy Space Center, and 29 from Space Launch Complex 40, including yesterday's one that is from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. On the West Coast, we have 19 launches, including today's one, all from Space Launch Complex 4 East, that is Vandenberg Space Force Base. And there was 2 launches from the Gulf Coast of Starbase back in Texas for Starship 3rd and 4th integrated flight test, now awaiting the next 5th integrated flight test. As for landings, they have nailed it 59 times. Most of them were on drone ships with 46 successful landings, out of which 15 were on Of Course I Still Love You, including one from today. 12 on just read the instructions, and 19 on a shortfall of gravitas. And for ground landings, they have pulled off 13 times, 8 times on landing zone 1, only 1 time on landing zone 2, and 4 times on landing zone 4 respectively. Now let's move on as it's time for the webcast to begin. Please excuse us for that glitch we were having. Now till the webcast begins, let me just keep saying some of the stats. The United States is dominating with 71 orbital launches comprising a substantial 62.9% of the global total. Recently, we had Rocket Lab's 49th Electron launching NASA's Pre-Fire CubeSat on Pre-Fire and ICE mission and Starliner CFD from Space Launch Complex at Cape. China follows closely behind. Now we heard the call out that the pressurization of tanks have started. We are adding a little bit of gas to form up the tanks so the clamp arms can open with a solid structure holding the Falcon 9. Once the arms are open, we start reclining the strong back about about 13 degrees
strong back lower has started
away from Falcon 9. We heard the call out. The process is now underway and you can see the clamp arms, although it is extremely foggy as I said before. Hopefully you can see the clamp arms opening underneath the payload fairing. The transporter reclining 13 degrees away from the vehicle. Now we are less than 4 minutes away from liftoff. Coming up on T-3 minutes and 48 seconds, everything continues to be go. We are currently chilling in the Merlin engines back from T-7 minutes. That's when we open up the P-valves, which allows the propellant down to the engines to get them prepared for the ignition just before T0. Strong back retraction is a slow process. We have hydraulic actuators at the base of the strong back that will pull it away. We do it slowly because at that time we still have those lines that are carrying liquid oxygen to the second stage, as well as the electrical signals and the air conditioning up there in the payload fairing. We need to make sure that all of those easily stretch out and all mechanism works good so that we can recline
stage 1 lock load complete
without tugging any of the lines. So we got the call out right on time. Liquid oxygen loading of the first stage is complete. We are now waiting for second stage. That will finish up at just inside T-2 minute mark. Now currently we are inside 2.5 minutes The range continues to be green, and the weather, of course, as you can see, has cooperated, and we don't expect any weather conditions to develop in the last couple of minutes. Again, if for some reasons we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity. Now we'll be listening in a couple of seconds for lock float closeout on the second stage. Also would like to welcome Fairmate. Thanks for joining in, although it's late for you, I know, but still thanks for joining in. Hope you are doing fine.
Stage
And
2, launch load complete.
well, just a second, and to call out the countdown, stage 2 load is complete. All propellants are now on
Gas
board the
launch
Falcon
closeout.
9 with 1 million pounds of propellant. We did got a call out for grand ground gas closeout. That's where we bleed the pressure off, and that cold gas, when it reacts with the moist humid air, gives that nice white cloud, an indicator of upcoming launch. Next event, T-1 minute, we should hear the call out. The Falcon 9 computers are in startup
Falcon 9 is in startup.
and controlling the rocket for the remaining of the countdown. Right on time, we did got a call out for Falcon 9 being on startup. Stage 1, Falcon 9 flight computers on stage 1 and stage
LD,
2
go for launch.
are running the rocket to the last minute of count. SpaceX launch director giving go for the launch. We are coming up at T-minus 30 seconds. All system continues to remain go.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds.
Now T-minus 15 seconds from
T-minus 10,
liftoff.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff Falcon 9. Go SpaceX. Go direct to south.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Call out for the vehicle pitching downrange. Next, we should be hearing a call out for engine chamber pressure being nominal. Hopefully. T plus 30 seconds into the flight. Falcon 9 on its way with 20 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit with direct to cell satellites. Nice views of those clouds and fogs down below.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Good call outs there. Power and telemetry. Also, the propulsion is nominal. We are into the throttle bucket. A call out for the vehicle being supersonic. We exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9. Now Falcon 9 is faster than the speed of sound as we have gone supersonic.
Max Q.
Max Q call out. We are through the period of maximum stress on the vehicle. We have throttled the Merlin engines back to full power. Next up, we will be getting a call out for MBAC engine chill. To ignition for the first time during today's flight. And Fairmate, referring to Fairmate, please tune in to the tour of Starliner spacecraft as Sunny and Butch will be hosting that event. We are not able to stream that event as we are streaming this launch, so we are sorry for that. Now next we will be getting call outs for MECO, stage separation and MBAG ignition.
Stage separation confirmed.
Although we didn't got the call out for MECO, but it did happen anyways. We did got call out for the MECO, stage separation and MBAG ignition. The stage nitrogen thrusters is now being to reorient for stage, and the flight computers has commanded the 4 hypersonic titanium grid fins to slowly begin deploying. Now that the stage separation is successful,
Bearing separation confirmed.
we got call out for that the fairing separation has successfully jettisoned. We are looking right now a view of first stage continuing under the guidance of grid fins and the gravity as it descends back to Earth. It will continue to rise towards the apogee before descending back towards the landing on drone ship. Of course, I still love you, stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. Second stage, meanwhile, in the middle of its 6-minute burn, is on its way into the parking orbit. So far, the launch has been great. No issues. The first stage has done its job and it's on its way back. The second stage is running at full power and we are getting amazing views from space. Now we are getting ready for the first stage to return to the drone ship landing site. During this part of the flight, stage 1 relies solely on its grid fin for steering as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. The grid fins orient the Falcon 9 during re-entry and guide the rocket during its descent. Right now we are viewing the second stage, but occasionally on the left side of your screen, you will be seeing nitrogen gas bursts from the first stage for altitude control. These are basically used to position the vehicle as it heads back towards the drone ship. Next up, we will be hearing a call out for stage 1 entry burn being startup. I'm a little amazed that today's Capcom we didn't got a call out for the MECO. They should have been said it. They didn't mention the MECO, they didn't mention the MBAG ignition, just said that the stage separation confirmed. Now next up, as I mentioned earlier, we will be getting a call out for stage 1 entry burn being startup. The call out should be coming at T plus 6 minutes and 1 minute approximately. Then concluding the entry burn of stage 1 at 6 minutes and 28 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Right on time, and there's confirmation we have just lit 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. You can see now we are rapidly slowing down the vehicle as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, and this burn should last just around 27 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And there we go, that's confirmation of shutdown of entry burn on the first stage. The Falcon 9 first stage is equipped
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
The Falcon 9 first stage is equipped with 4 landing legs and
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Those are made out of carbon fiber. We did got call out for stage 1 FTS being saved as it crossed the re-entry mark. And we did got the call out for both vehicles being in nominal trajectory. That's a good call out. Next we should be expecting stage 2 call out later on when it will be passing through its orbital insertion burn. Up next, maybe we will be getting a call out for stage 1 being
Stage 1 transonic.
Yes.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
right on time. Both callouts, you just heard the call out. Stage 1 now is traveling slower than the speed of sound as it heads towards landing. As of landing, we are just 60 seconds away from that. Next call out we should be expecting is stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There we go. Great shot of that landing burn. With that center E9 engine now lit, we are slowing down the vehicle very rapidly. Should be
Stage 2
seeing those
terminal guidance.
landing legs deploy any seconds now.
Landing leg deploy.
Landing legs being deployed. And there you
Stage
have
1
it.
landing confirmed.
We have successfully made the 301st landing of an orbital class rocket. Coming up next, we will have the second stage engine cutoff, that is SECO 1. And following that event, we will enter into nearly 45 minutes of coast phase as the vehicle ascends to its target orbit. And to those callouts, we were waiting for second stage engine cutoff as well as the confirmation of good nominal orbit. Today's landing marks 318th SpaceX overall landing of an orbital class rocket. And with that, we will wrap up our coverage for now. Be sure to check out the social media for confirmation of Starlink deployment. Before concluding, we want to thank all of you joining us with today's launch, and we hope that you all enjoyed the weekend ahead. Also would like to thank Fairmate for being with us for such long time, although this stream didn't stretch so long, but now hopefully you will have your, what you call it, beautiful sleep. Yes. So good night to you and to everyone. Hope you all enjoyed the stream. Once again, thanks for joining us, showing your such patience, love and understanding. We are glad to have you all here with us. This is AstroYonder Live and me, Dipta, signing off for now, and we will see you next time.